Hi guys, this is Bill from Spencer1984.com with part 1 of building the 32 Ford Roadster from the movie Deuce of Spades. I'm going to be doing this video a little bit differently to hopefully better show how I've done some modifications on the build. And starting out here with the chassis, one of the first things that I did was I modified the transmission mount from the back side to the front side of that cross member there in the middle. And that's because the engine that I'll be using is this one from AMT's 55 Chevy Stepside, and it's a transmission from my parts box. I don't remember exactly what it came off of, but you can see it's got a much shorter tail shaft than a lot of transmissions, and definitely shorter than what originally came in the kit. So I moved that, and then I also cut off the original engine mounts, which were right around here, and made some all new ones up front with the diagonal cuts there on the front. And then that fits in just like that. And now that I've done all the test fitting and made sure that everything lines up the way it's supposed to, it's time to get this in some paint. And here's the chassis painted. I went with Model Master Classic Black, which has a nice gloss without it being a really high gloss like you would see in a modern paint job. So it's got a nice vintage look to it. I've used this on other things before and generally have been happy with it. And Model Master paints are generally pretty good. And the places where I made the modifications here look pretty clean. So I'm going to call this good. I'm going to give it another few days to dry. It's still just a little bit tacky to the touch, but then that's going to be ready to go. And I also got the engine painted. I used Tamiya TS8 Italian red over gray primer, which gives it a nice kind of generic red. And the engine had been painted red before, but that was before I knew I was going to be attaching it to this transmission. And I was thinking too new. I was thinking of transmissions now with the aluminum cases, but at the time that this movie took place, because I'm building this as the 1950 version, but when this took place, the transmission still had cast iron cases, and so they were painted engine color. So that's what I did here. And I've also got the starter added to it. I've got the fuel pump painted, and I did a little bit of carving out so that it wasn't obviously part of the block. Just got a knife in this little area here and carved that out to make it a little more round looking. And I've got the intake manifold on it. Had to do a little bit of carving to get that to fit, but that does pretty well now. And so that's also ready to go. And I also started work on the body. I've got the external door handles filled in, and I also had to do a little bit of filler right there on the top of the door. There's one of those strips to help the casting process, and when I cut that off it took a chunk out of the top of the door. So that's filled in now. I just need to wait for the filler to finish hardening, and then I'll give that a sanding and that'll be ready for paint. And then the last thing that I worked on is I got some paint on the interior panels. And these are actually Duplicolor red primer with some clear coat on it. It's a technique I've used before and have been pretty happy with. This is the first time I'm using the Duplicolor red, but overall I think this worked out pretty well. And looking ahead, there are a couple of things that I'm going to be replacing in this kit. One of those is the front axle. I've taken this from the Monogram 32 Ford Street Rod because it looks a little bit closer to what was on the movie car. And same thing for the dashboard, which has the standard centered instrument cluster, as opposed to the Highboy kit, which has this fancier full-width dashboard with a late model radio in it. I haven't fully decided yet, but I'm also thinking about using the rear axle from the Monogram car, because it's a standard vintage Ford item, whereas the one that came in the Highboy kit is a newer style. This one is probably going to be more accurate for the 50s aesthetic, but no matter how I build it, if I'm building it accurate to the movie, there's going to be a few anachronisms, so it's just a matter of which ones I want to accept and which ones I want to correct. So that's it for this week. Let me know what you guys think about the kind of extended look at how things went together, if you think that's helpful, if you think I'm still glossing over too much, or if you think that this is dragging things out and I should just shorten it back to quick updates. And check back next week when I'll have the engine installed and we'll at least have the beginnings of the suspension system installed. Thanks for watching.